Hello, honey. How are you? I'm so glad to be home. Oh, it's been a long week. Yeah, I'm just glad to be done with work for another week. I know. I'm exhausted. I really am. But I did stop by the drugstore like I promised, and I got that new lotion I want to try. Because I really, really want to enjoy our night off together. Let me just try a little bit of it. Okay, I just got a little bit on my hand. Yeah, I know. Well, we've got to take care of the kids, and we're gonna have to do this for a few more years till our little girl's out of high school at least. I wish I made more money and then you wouldn't have to work, but I understand. Well, we both want more out of life. It'll pay off. But I do miss you. You keep me going. I'll admit that. Thinking about you is sometimes the only thing that keeps me going. And I do love you. Even when there's distances involved, I think about you often. And it's nights like this where we can actually share a little time together. I remember why we got together in the first place. Just getting some lotion on my hands before I start working on your hands and arms. It doesn't feel right when your hands are dry. Yeah. What happened this week at work? You don't want to know. My boss is all over me. The building, the rebuilding of the Pentagon is going real well. So I'm really happy about that. Yeah. I should be able to get back in my office pretty soon. So that's a plus. Oh, the secretary pool is full of these girls and guys out of college that they don't know anything. But enough about work. I do have a story for you, though, if you want to hear it. You remember my old friend Margaret? Margaret Hamilton. Remember her? Yes, the movie actress. Oh God, she's wonderful. What a delight. She invited us up to a christening for her son in New York. About a month from now. I'll have to give you the dates. I hope we can make it. Maybe we can even see a show. Oh, Margaret, she's hilarious. Did I ever tell you that she worked with me before the war? I know you'll never believe this story, but it all started on the set of the famous children's movie, The Wizard of Oz. Margaret was really looking for some extra work. She never signed on to a studio and always charged $1,000 a week for her services back in those days. And she was a character actor, and she was selected to be the Wicked Witch, which was the perfect person. She is the Wicked Witch of the West. But what people didn't know is she worked with me at the Department of Navy as a subcontractor. That's right. We were on the lookout for a man who was a very high-ranking Nazi official in Germany. Yes, the Third Reich. And his name was Friedrich-Wilhelm Krüger. Now, Friedrich-Wilhelm Krüger disguised himself and was taking roles in Hollywood productions in the late 1930s. This isn't something you're going to read about in Time magazine. This is a hidden history. And our dear Margaret, selected as the Wicked Witch, goes to work. She's just really enjoying herself, hits it off with Judy Garland. Everybody thinks the world of her, and she's so frightening. She is absolutely one of the most frightening people ever seen in the movies. So many people remember her for that. So here's dear Margaret on set, enjoying herself, having lunch with several of the main actors. And in walks another villain. Somebody playing the part of the lead of the army of the Flying Monkeys. And he has a red and green striped sweater on. A greenish fedora cap. And on his hand are 4 blades. 4 long nails, like the nails of a house cat, out of control. Only on one hand, and they clinked, and he used the claws on his hand to cut up the meat of his lunch as he sat and talked to all the actors. And he mainly focused his attention on the very young and innocent Judy Garland. Betty Danko, who was Margaret Hamilton's stand-in for stunts, remarked to Margaret that she thought he was getting a little too friendly with a girl Judy's age, maybe overstepping his bounds a little bit, and even becoming a little frightening with the way he was acting. But this could be attributed to character development, so they let it go. Later on, while filming the many takes of the poppy field scene, as our wonderful travelers of Oz, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, and of course Toto and Dorothy, were running across the poppy field, all of the human beings, or human characters in the party, became overcome with the opiates of the poppy field. The Cowardly Lion succumbed to the opiates, and he collapsed in a field of flowers. Toto fell down. The poor little dog was helpless amongst these beautiful flowers. Feeling better? There you go. And then our dearest Dorothy suddenly collapsed into the flowers and fell into a deep hypnotic sleep. Of course, the actors who played the Tin Man and Scarecrow were not asleep. They were wide awake. And they were crying, and they were upset, as was called for in the script. And then then suddenly, off into the distance, there arose the most hideous of figures. There he was, Freddy Krueger, rising from the poppy field in all his stark horror. This macabre individual brandishing his clawed hand and stretching it out in a most ominous fashion, clicking and clacking the metal finger bars of sharpened steel razors, entered the scene. There was to be a standoff between the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, but upon seeing the stark image of primeval nightmarish horror, the director immediately cut the scene. He stopped production and had the scriptwriters remove Friedrich-Wilhelm Krüger and all of his character scenes from the movie. And a retake was asked for. But you didn't know any of this. During the retake of the poppy field scene, the party again enters the field of flowers on their way to Oz. The lion succumbs to the opiates and collapses in the magic aura of the sleeping potion. Toto collapses, and Dorothy follows, limply sliding into a field of beautiful blooms of poppies. But then something else happens. Something new happens. The Tin Man and the Scarecrow suddenly collapse. Everyone in the party, in the field, has collapsed. The director reaches for his megaphone and cues his directing assistant to stop filming, cut the scene. As he raises the megaphone to his face, he suddenly realizes everyone around him has succumbed to whatever agent is being emitted from the studio field. They're all collapsing, unconscious, as everyone in the field has become unconscious. Suddenly, out in the poppy field rises that nightmarish figure once again. And up out of the field comes Freddy Krueger once again. There will be no interruptions this time. Here, director, Kruger says into the camera that is still rolling. You will have Hollywood's very first on-screen death as I kill the great Dorothy. And Judy Garland will never sing over the rainbow to inspire America in the time of Friedrich Krueger approached the innocent, slumbering Judy Garland, flicking out his clawed hand, ready to strike. Suddenly, there was a noise at the large metal soundproofing stage doors, and in walked Margaret Hamilton. That's right, the Wicked Witch of the West, even more frightening in appearance and visage, with a active gas mask on, accompanied by Betty Danko, also brazening not only gas masks, but 32 revolvers. They opened fire on Friedrich Krueger at a great distance, missing their target, but stopping his attack. Friedrich Krueger dissolved back into the poppy field and disappeared from view. And as he left, the spell, the chemical vapor, whatever the case may be, emitting itself from the field, faded away, and everybody awoke to confusion over what had just occurred. Margaret and Betty chose to keep silent about the events that day, but knew that Freddy Krueger would not leave until he had drawn blood and slain Judy Garland. So they devised a plan. On February 11th, 1939, there was a pyrotechnic scene where the Wicked Witch Sky wrote a message to Dorothy and everyone in Oz. It was the perfect opportunity for Frederick to make his appearance. And the ladies booby-trapped the props they were using with stronger incendiaries. And lo and behold, as he had many times on set, Freddy Krueger again tried to make his appearance known and tried to attack the innocent, unsuspecting Judy Garland. And at that moment, on February 11th, 1939, Betty Danko, on cue, set off the incendiary device. And the pipe that was disguised to look like a broom for the skywriting effect exploded, burning her legs with third-degree permanent scarring burns. Margaret Hamilton received third-degree burns on her hand, second-degree burns on her face. But the worst of the explosion was suffered by Friedrich-Wilhelm Krüger. His face and hair were completely engulfed in flames. Shrapnel tore the red and green sweater on his body, and he was blown completely and utterly helpless against the stage room wall, his head lit like the top of a candle. In pain and agony, he recovered his consciousness and put his hands over his face. Large amounts of skin were torn from him as he put out the fire and tried to make his escape, blindly running as he could barely see through the flames on his face. But escape he did, mortally wounded, ruined, and a failure. Friedrich Krueger left MGM Studios, never to try and kill Judy Garland again. He returned to Nazi Germany and through the war carried out some of the most heinous war crimes in Poland, Yugoslavia, and Finland, until he finally committed suicide in 1945 at the end of the war. Everything in his life was a failure. All his alliances broken. All his works on this planet evil. You can see when you're watching The Wizard of Oz scenes in the forest and in Oz, different parts of the movie. The Wicked Witch of the West hiding behind a tree, behind a rock, behind a house, always leering, peering out at Dorothy and her party. But this wasn't the act of an evil sorceress witch. No. This was the act of a concerned woman who loved children, constantly watching from a distance for the next time the nightmare demon Freddy Krueger was going to attempt his next attack. The aftermath of The Wizard of Oz has been written about in history books, and it's a sad epilogue. Betty Danko, of course, spent 11 days in the hospital with her severe injuries. Permanently scarred from her waist down from the explosion. Margaret Hamilton spent 6 weeks recovering from the damage of the explosion to her hand and her face. And in that time, a young Judy Garland would come visit her at home while she convalesced and helped her take care of her young child. And it was then that she told Judy Garland what was happening around her. And it had a most profound effect. As young as she was, Judy was not prepared for this kind of information. And she began to take pills to prevent her from sleeping deep slumber for fear of the return of Friedrich Krueger. And in her darkest, deepest nightmares, he would return again and again with that clawed hand, that red and green sweater, that bent worn fedora hat, and that deeply scarred and deformed and utterly ruined face to haunt her until the day she died. One day, Margaret broke down and told me this story, this hidden history behind the movie The Wizard of Oz, in hopes that someday we would recover those lost pieces of film that still have Freddy Krueger in them, keeping him alive. Those little tiny clips of film from the poppy field. Out there, locked away in a lost vault, somewhere in a movie studio, lost forever, and allowing his soul to reach out and stay attached to a thread of his own life, his evil never truly dying as long as that film exists. And Margaret dedicates her life to finding that film, searching and searching every vault, every safe in every office, in every warehouse, in every storage room she can find. And still that film eludes her. And the nightmare of Freddy Krueger lives on. I hope you enjoyed your massage session. Do you feel better? I know I do. My hands were very dry. They feel wonderful now. Your skin looks a lot more fresh after a treatment. This lotion is very good. We'll have to do it again sometime. It's been a long week. I like that idea. We should just relax, watch a little TV, see what's on the Ed Sullivan Show tonight. That's right. You never know what really goes on behind closed doors. And that's what hidden history is all about. Thank you. God bless you and have a most blessed day.